All right. I'm excited to dive into this one with you here today. Do you remember, I don't know, a couple episodes ago, I was going through Matthew 19, and I said I wanted to come back to this topic where the master says to the servants, he says, engage in business until I come. And it was like their ability to engage in business and turn a positive ROI that the master wanted to see and what qualified them to rule over cities. So like the ROI that they get from the master was far exceeded by the ROI that the master gave them, which is like, cool, you turned like a couple months wages into 6 months wages. Great. Now you're in charge of 10 cities. That's like a crazy big jump. But let me not get too far ahead of myself here. This is relatively a new way for me to think about this. So I'm wrestling out loud here. When I was growing up, I grew up in a pastor's home, and we were doing ministry almost every day, but certainly Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, Wednesday mornings, weekends. My brothers, sisters, and I would lead music, and with my mom, and it was a small church, and so we were very much involved, and most of our family's life revolved around ministry, around this like voluntary giving of your life to serve other people, and those people in return pay your salary and pay your bills and things as a thank you. So I grew up in a home where ministry just shaped everything. And so I went to, which is good, by the way. I'm not dogging on that, but it is a little different than what I've, for those of you who know me, where my story ended up. I went into Bible college, went into seminary, fully expecting to be full-time in ministry, specifically youth and family ministry, for the rest of my life. And the people I knew who were in business, I respected those people and thought they were smart, and like, man, they're making way more money than I've ever seen. They have things that I never expected to have or possess myself. And I was just kind of okay, because I personally, not necessarily my family, but I had a little bit more of a martyr syndrome, where it's like I sacrifice everything, I'm doing all this for the Lord, and the more you suffer, the more the closer you are to God, the more happy He is with you, type of thing. And so I kind of view the businessmen as kind of like a necessary thing for them to do, but like it was better to be poor and to serve in ministry, and then let them pay my bills through tithes and offerings and, that type of thing. So now, though, fast forward to today, when I read Luke 19, I see this very differently. In fact, I don't even think I paid careful attention to this story beforehand. It was like, yeah, parable of talents, whatever. But when you read what Jesus actually says, this just strikes me totally differently now. So Luke 19, verses 13 and 15, and just get the verse 14 because it's not relevant to our conversation, although it is to the story, obviously. But Jesus says, calling 10 of his servants, he gave them 10 minas and said to them, engage in business until I come. And then when he returned, having received the kingdom, he ordered these servants to whom he had given money to be called to him, that he might know might know what they had gained by doing business. All right. So what the master doesn't do here, he's like, all right, I'm going away, and while I'm gone, I want you to study the Bible. I want you to take spiritual gift assessments. I want you to become theology nerds. He says, he gives them money and says, engage in business, not prayer, not Bible study, not ministry, business. And at first, I'm not really sure what to do with that. Why would the master go that direction? When he returns, he receives the kingdom. He's coming back as the king, and he's asking about an ROI, a return on investment. And so the servant who had 1 mina gets 10 cities. There's different from 1 to 10. The one who made 5 gets 5 cities. And then the guy who buried he gets slaughtered. That's literally the word in the ESV. It says he was slaughtered. Not demoted, not like, okay, well, you get a second chance. He was killed. And I want to soften this. Jesus says his words are, as for these enemies of mine who did not want me to reign over them, bring them here and slaughter them before me. Guys, come on. Jesus, you shouldn't say things like this, right? I want to explain this away as like hyperbole or limited to just kind of like political enemies who are mentioned earlier in the parable or, whatever. But the servant who buried his mina is grouped with those who reject the king. And playing it safe was not a good option. In fact, Jesus says, kill him with the others who rebelled. So I think if I'm just going to take Jesus at his words here, I think he believes something I struggle with, which is fruitfulness is not optional. The master expects that we are going to multiply what has been entrusted to us. And when we do, we receive cities in the kingdom one day, which I'll talk about maybe here in a second a little bit more. I did totally unpack that a little bit more in a previous episode, but I know not everyone listens to everyone, so I'll give a hat tip to that in a second. Yeah. So if you're not fruitful, in other words, you're not obeying the king, you've declared whose side you're on, and it's not his. So to the master, like how fruitful someone is today in business, apparently, seems to determine how fit one is to rule in the age that's coming. And if I had read that as, that kid in Bible college and seminary and kind of thought about what I'm thinking today, I would feel very uncomfortable, at least, if not maybe angry and defiant and just wanted to shut the conversation down, which is usually not a good response to any conversation, but you know what I mean? So I think I just grew up, and again, this is not my parents, it's just me. I think I just grew up seeing business as a secular thing that some people do as a necessary evil to fund the ministry that other people are doing. And the real work for the kingdom is in this full-time vocational ministry arena. But I think what Jesus is saying here, a lot of things in this parable, is that business itself is how we prepare to be qualified and eligible to rule cities and to have a bigger role in the kingdom that comes when he returns. So why business? Why is business the thing that Jesus picks on? Why is that the thing like, hey, engage in business, and he comes back, he's like, how did you do in business? So I started a business in 2013. And I had a job at the time, and they were like, Tim, we love you. You've been awesome, but in 6 months, we're not going to be continuing to go this direction with YouTube strategy and things for our clients. But we think you should start a business for other people doing what you've done for us. And I'm like, I don't know anything about business. Like, all my degrees are in Bible and theology. Like, I don't even know what a business model is. That's just like a really long document with small fonts, all in Times New Roman and like no spacing, like big words. I don't know anything about this. And they're like, well, Tim, come use our Wi-Fi, come use our resources. You got 6 months. Let us help you get this business off the ground. And so I had some encouragement from them. And then after not only starting that business, but growing it and then ultimately selling it a few years ago, why would Jesus pick business? In my experience, maybe there's a few reasons, probably more than this. I could probably unpack this further, but I did jot down some notes because I didn't want to ramble too much in front of you guys. I think one reason is that business really forces you to create value where there was no value before. It forces you to manage resources, to assess risk, to lead others, to bear the weight of responsibility, to own up to success and failure. It just like is a really good testing ground of whether or not you can be faithful with what's entrusted to you when no one is watching, when no one knows what the outcomes are going to be, when everything's on the line, when you could cheat a little bit, whether it be on taxes or in sales or in delivery or whatever, and no one would notice. There's some character development that happens as business. But ultimately it's like this, you are creating value where none existed. And number two, then it does reveal what your character, like few other things I know of, like in a prayer group, you can fake some spirituality. You can, I mean, a lot of people do this. You can coast on just being very outgoing and personal in ministry. But business is like way more honest than the church is in some ways, because if you don't create value for people, you go out of business. If you can't get people to freely exchange their resources for a solution that you're offering, you go out of business. And so are you multiplying what was given, or does it stay stagnant and die? Like you have to grow in business. You have to figure out how to make someone feel like this is a really good exchange and I am getting the better end of the bargain here for what I'm paying for. And I think a third reason is that business is kind of what like God's mission was from the very beginning. His mission at the very beginning is he takes something that is empty, that is chaotic, that is void, and he uses his own creativity and his own attention, and he turns it into something that is orderly, something that is beautiful and fruitful. And he creates mankind, and then he turns around and gives us the same blessing. He's like, all right, I've done this. I've created this canvas for you. Now your job is to be fruitful and to multiply. And Genesis 1:22 says this was a blessing. It says, now he blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. So this wasn't just a command, like this is what you're to do. This is a blessing. It's good. Now we know Genesis 3 happens, the fall, the curse happens, and now the work itself is now toil. But that doesn't mean it's not a blessing. It's just a lot harder now, and it's under a curse. And I would assume that all of us, I know I do, feel the effects of that curse every single day in our work, in what we're doing. It's toil. It is hard. It's a challenge, but it's still part of how we maybe join God in his mission of being fruitful and multiplying. I don't think the command has changed. I don't think the blessing has changed. It's just hard now. And so we are created to work, and that I think is his original job description for us. Like, take what God has made and make it more fruitful. I think, like, what was God envisioned for the world had sin not entered? Like, what was he picturing? What would have happened? And I think what would have happened is that a garden in Eden would have grown, been fruitful, it would have spread, and then started populating cities for this kingdom, for this king and his kingdom around the world, until ultimately the world is the king's domain, and it is full of cities, of people who are submitted to the authority of the king. And I don't think, so when I think of Jesus is giving this parable in Luke 19, I think that's what he has in mind. Like, hey guys, the kingdom's going to come, and the end of the story, like, I'm going to fix what's broken. I'm going to get this back. I know a lot of Christians have this escapism mentality of faith, where it's like, get me off this planet. That's not my home. I'm looking forward to my real home. I don't know. Like, I don't want to get into that. I do have some questions about that. I think sometimes we interpret these passages more through like Greek mythology or even Marvel, comics, than we do through what the Hebraic lens would have been for these stories. But maybe put that aside, and I look at Revelation 20 through 21 and 22. That's kind of the idea I get. is that it comes down, it fills the city comes down, fills the earth, and the king is ruling. And so I don't know. I don't think that this ruling city thing is just a metaphor. I think it's an extension like of Genesis 1 and 2. And Genesis 1 and 2 seem to parallel Revelation 20 through 22 so well. So God's saying multiply goodness here on earth. Yes, it's under, the sin is here. We're under a curse. Well, we aren't. The earth is under the curse. It specifically says childbearing is cursed and the ground is cursed. Not man. There was mercy in that curse. It wasn't man. It was the ground. The thing that the man was responsible for is now cursed. And then there's this whole other thing where you will desire, it says to the woman, you'll desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you. That's a whole nother thing, maybe for another time. But you get the idea, like ruling over, that's of stuff. That was the original intent, and I think that's why this parable in Luke 18:19 is like maybe not totally figurative as some people make it out to be. So I think he says business. I think that's what he means is like your job is to take things that are chaotic and make them orderly. You're to multiply that goodness. You're to create culture and civilization. You're to take this garden and grow it until cities like this are covering the whole earth. And that's kind of what business does at its core. It's taking resources. We get to apply our creativity and our effort, and then it produces something more valuable than what existed before. And even though it's not always involving actual physical dirt, I think it still falls in this category of subduing the earth. It's multiplying fruitfulness. It's fulfilling the original design for manhood that God stamped into us at creation. And so the master's command to engage in business, I don't think it was like this arbitrary test to see if they could do good math and how good they were at spreadsheets and, sales funnels and things. I think he's trying to reconnect his servants to the purpose he made them as image bearers. He's like, I made you my image. This is what I did. Cool. Now you do it. And so the master here in this parable is asking, can you do what men were created to do? Can you take what I've given you and make it fruitful? So in Luke 19, these servants who succeed in this mission of business and being involved in business, they receive cities to govern. And I think this is what I missed back in Bible college and seminary. I thought business was the end of itself. Like the goal of business is to make money. And if I was going to go in a very cynical direction with that, the goal of business is to extract value from other people. Is how do I get into their wallets and take their money? What do I have to do to get their money? I don't think that's the goal anymore. Business is preparation to rule. It is the fulfillment, I think, or part of the fulfillment of Genesis 1, of that blessing had sin not entered. And so when I build a business, when I was doing that, I was learning to assess people in interviews and job applications and clients, like who's going to be a good fit for what we're doing here. I had to make decisions that impacted my family's life and my employees' lives and our customers. I had to bear responsibility for whatever the outcomes were. And usually those outcomes impacted other people. I had to multiply resources, not just preserve them. Some I had to preserve for when resources weren't as plentiful, but ultimately like this thing needed to grow. I had to lead people. I had to learn how to manage people, how to work with the team, how to direct work, and how to help other people get their work done in a more fruitful way than it was before. I had to create order. I had to create value in this small little domain of YouTube strategy. So these types of skills, I think, are what's necessary and what's needed to govern a city. I think the master is saying that the man who can make one mina, which is like, I think it's about a month's wages, into 10 wages, has demonstrated he can take a small domain and multiply its fruitfulness. he's ready for a larger domain, and I want to be ready for a larger domain. My work in business, and now as an employee at the company who purchased my business, and I still do some fun business stuff on the side personally, but it's not my main daily thing by any means. I think, and the reason for me, I've said this before, but the reason, so I owned my own business for 10 years, and I learned a lot of good skills there. Now as an employee, the skill I'm learning is, how do I lead well when I'm not 100% in charge? And I think that's a skill I'm going to need one day in the kingdom, when I still won't be 100% in charge. I will be in submission to a good king. And so I'm treating my time now as an employee as still skill acquisition for what I'm going to need to rule with him one day over these cities, whatever that looks like. I don't know how specifics. I think the Bible gives us enough glimpses into what that looks like, but because the alternative is like this guy who was slaughtered, like he buried it. He didn't persevere. He didn't take risks. He never multiplied. He was suspicious of his master and content to just try to survive rather than grow. And it seems like Jesus is like, that guy he's not on board with my mission. So he's my enemy, which again, sounds so harsh. But I think I can make sense of it if I think, like, right now we're in a different age. Like, we're in an age where grace is freely given, and it's abundant, right? And there's still time to repent and to confess. But at that time, when the master comes, and it's like game over. It's like, all right, the time for that is past. Now you got to show me fruitfulness. And this is another one I want to get into. I'm not going to get into it today, but I have started drafting some thoughts on 1 Corinthians, where Paul says, and that person will enter the kingdom, the one who has trusted Christ but isn't actively living in submission to lordship. I don't know. I'm speaking too early on it, but basically it says that person will get into the kingdom, but by the skin of their teeth. They will be like going through fire. So they'll be in there, but they'll have nothing to show for it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want that. I want something to show for it. So I'll talk more about that later, maybe, because one, I haven't quite formulated my thoughts around that one, but I see glimpses of that here in this story of, like, he never built anything. He's just trying to avoid risk, wants to play it safe, and he's not fit to rule. So if business is the training ground for ruling in the kingdom, then our work as Christian men is not necessarily an evil distraction in the business, or even a distraction from real ministry. It's actually the arena where we're being tested and we're being trained for eternal authority. So guys, it's just really important, I think, that we're faithful. We're faithful in building businesses, in managing assets, in creating value. And I know I've been talking about this primarily from a monetary business perspective, but I think it's also that we're showing faithfulness in our marriages. We're making them fruitful in our children. Like, that's actual multiplication. My wife and I somehow managed to have 7 kids in 8 years. I don't know how many kids each of them will have, if someone will maybe have none at all, but it's going to multiply. I can't, maybe I'll take my parents, for example. I don't know how many grandkids they have, but there was 6 of us kids, and I think they're in the 30s, some grandkids. So that sounds like multiplication to me. So I think raising godly children who continue to multiply to the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that, that's I think such a good way to think about multiplying fruit, because it continues after you pass. And all of this is not just like a nice thing we do on the side. Like, you go to church and you read the Bible, then you have family, then you have business. I think all these things are intertwined. This, like, running a good, healthy, strong business that reaches people and changes their lives, that is part of our spiritual formation. Learning how to work through marital issues and conflicts and continue to see it become more intimate and more fruitful, that's spiritual formation. Doing the same thing with our kids, that is spiritual formation. Every hard decision we have to make is teaching us judgment. Every time we take a risk is training us to deepen our faith that He is the one who actually is going to multiply this and give us wisdom in the process. Every time we lead people in our teams and we're managing people, it's teaching us how do we shepherd others and their gifts and their skills and their resources for one day for a city. Every time we fail, we are learning how do I pick up and keep going, and I'm developing resilience. I think business is the perfect training ground for preparing to lead a city one day. But even as I think about being a father, like this influences how I parent my sons. Like it's not just teaching them to love Jesus and say their prayers before they go to sleep and be nice people, whatever. I mean, it's part of that, but I'm training them to be fruitful and to multiply what's entrusted to them. I want them to start taking dominion over little things now so that they'll be ready for greater responsibilities as they grow older. I took my son, my oldest son, Ezekiel, when he turned 13, I took him out to Alaska on an invitation to manhood trip with a couple other dads and sons and things. And on that trip, it was like, all right, you're entering your teen years. This isn't about like wasting your years and frivolous things. Like you are training now to become a man. Your teen years are you're leaving boyhood behind and you are training for manhood. And man, he really latched onto that. And I can see that in so many ways. So for example, he's 15 now, and he started making some money and introduced him to mutual funds. And Fidelity has a good custodial services thing for minors who want to start investing things. So we set that up, relatively simple. And he, not every day, but is regularly checking his investments in mutual funds and in just like S&P 500 type of stuff. And he comes to me, he's like, Dad, the stock market's only been open for 20 minutes and I just made $121. I'm like, that's great. But then I also see him on the days he loses money in there, and he's showing patience. At first he was like, I want to take it out. Like, Dad, are you sure this is a good idea? Like, I'm losing money. And for him, when he loses money, for all of us, but especially him, this is like literal hard labor that he's doing to get this money. And so when he loses it, at first it was very tough. He's like, Dad, I don't know. I want to pull this out. But he has it and he's not. And now he's learning to have a long-term perspective on ROI. Not that mutual funds are like the ultimate way to do that, but you get the idea. Like he is learning at 15 years old how to delay gratification, how to have a long-term vision. And he's already saving for a house, a down payment on a house. He's saving for a truck. He's got his driver's permit so he can, he wants to get a car here, a truck at some point. And so but he's also budgeting money for spending. Anyway, all that just to say, like, I think about fatherhood now as like this season of teenage years is how do I help my kids become prepared, not just to live a fruitful life, but then become prepared to govern. And I can see that happening already in my son in some small ways, and my daughters and my other kids too, but I'm just using him as an example here. So I don't know, guys, when I just think about to where I was many years ago at this point, coming out of seminary, coming out of Bible college, thinking I was going to go into full-time ministry. And obviously I did that. I did that for about 12 years. If I had looked at this passage then, it would just be unsettling to me how much the master cares about ROI, return on investment. And he's not impressed with the man who played it safe. He's furious with him. The master calls him wicked for not even putting the money in the bank to earn interest. Like that was the least he could have done, was just let it earn interest. He demands faithfulness, and not just faithfulness in the sense of like, let me be careful not to lose anything. Like he wants us to take some risks. He rewards multiplication, and he punishes the opposite of that. So I think, to me, this reveals something about the heart of God that shapes how I think about life right now. And it's that the kingdom that's coming, God, I feel so harsh saying this. It doesn't seem to me like this is for men who just kind of showed up and didn't take too many risks, didn't make any mistakes, played it safe. This is coming to men who took what they were given, relationally, financially, time, giftedness, skills, resources, and they took risks to make it more fruitful. And so I don't think God is honored when I play it small. I don't think he's glorified when I try to just protect everything. I think he's entrusting me with resources today because he's preparing me for cities tomorrow. And the question for me is whether or not I'm engaging in business or I'm burying what I've been giving. So every hard moment that I'm facing in business and leadership and leading my family, is it multiplying? Is it training me for cities, or is it distracting me from the kingdom? Or maybe I'm acquiring these things for my own self-pleasure, in my own glory, in my own feeling. And I did this, I'll be honest with you guys, I did this in the earlier parts of business. When I started making more money than I ever thought I could ever make in my life, I started feeling like, thank you, Lord, for giving this to me. Like I was thankful, but I felt like I deserved it. I felt like I had still kind of earned it in some way. Like, yeah, of course God would give it to me, right? And there's this the subtle pride had come in, and I don't think that's what the master is. I think he wants to know who's got humility to give it all back when I ask for it. Who's like the rich young ruler? Like, is this thing an idol for you that is distracting me, that's distracting you, that has captured your heart more than me, or is I forgot my pronouns backwards, but you get what I mean. Or is this something that for us is like, no, master, like this is all yours. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to manage it well, and for using it to train me and to qualify me for something that's to come. And so I think he's watching. I think he's going to return. I think he's going to have a judgment day. And he's like, hey, so how'd it go? And I really want him to say, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into your master's happiness. Not outside where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Maybe we should talk about that outside part somewhere too. The weeping and gnashing teeth. If you have like this escapism mentality of heaven, that probably doesn't make much sense. But maybe we'll come back to it another time. I want to recommend a good book for you guys. This book was so helpful for me in the early days of my business. It's called Every Good Endeavor by Timothy Keller. And the whole point of that book is, how do we take our work and connect it to God's work? Our work is not just like this necessary thing we have to do. And we all really want is to long for some sort of utopia, good life where we just sit on beaches and don't have to work and have everyone serve us and we think that's the good life, but I don't think it is. I think the good life is preparing for what's to come. That's it, and even then we'll be serving. And so Tim's Keller book, Every Good Endeavor, it just really shifted my mindset and understanding of what I was doing in business. I wasn't just trying to get some money in so I could feed my family, although that certainly was a practical part of it. But I wasn't even really trying to just grow a business. I was seeking the kingdom. Our relation to the kingdom is to seek it, not to grow it, not to build it, not to establish it, not to expand it. Jesus says in Matthew 6, seek the kingdom. That's your relation to it. That assumes it can be found. And so you look for it, and then you join God in the work that he's already doing. You partner with his Holy Spirit, and you let him lead you and guide you and help you make this thing profitable. It's not just about our efforts. It's about listening, hearing, obeying, and then watching him do it. And when it doesn't go right, there's still lessons in that. So anyway, I'm getting off to my own little preachiness again. But that book, Every Good Endeavor, highly recommend. I'll put a link to it in the show notes if you're interested. Also in the show notes, there's a link to speakpipe.com/Tim Schmoyer. if you would like to leave me a voice message, got some already. Thank you guys for sending them in, but I want to do episode or just answering questions, responding to comments, just hearing your stories, and just even like kind of what's coming up for you guys as you're thinking about this. I'm wrestling out loud in front of you. I'd love to hear what you're wrestling with as you hear these things. What does it make you think of? What does it make you wrestle with? What changes in your business and your family have come as a result of some of this? So love to hear it, guys. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.